August 2nd, 1990, 200 hours local time. The Iraqi Republican Guard rolls across the Kuwaiti border with 3 armored divisions, the Hammurabi, the Medina, and the Tawakalna, 100,000 troops, 700 tanks. Within 48 hours, the Emir of Kuwait is airlifted out of his palace, the Kuwaiti army is destroyed, and Saddam Hussein controls 20% of the world's known oil reserves. The problem for Washington is geography. The nearest full American combat division is in Germany. The nearest heavy armor is in Fort Hood, Texas, 6,800 miles away by sea. Saddam has 30 divisions already in theater. If he keeps rolling south into Saudi Arabia, he takes Dhahran, Ras Tanura, and the largest oil complex on Earth. He would control 45% of global crude. President George H.W. Bush understood in that first week what almost no one else did. The United States had about 10 days before Saddam could physically walk into Saudi Arabia unopposed. General Norman Schwarzkopf, commander of Central Command, presents the war plan to Bush at Camp David on August 4th. Schwarzkopf tells him bluntly, to defend Saudi Arabia, we need 200,000 troops in the desert within 90 days. To liberate Kuwait, we need double that. And every single soldier, tank, bullet, bandage, sandbag, and bottle of water has to cross the Atlantic, transit the Suez, and come ashore in a country with 3 deepwater ports and 1 modern airfield. It cannot be done. Then Schwarzkopf makes the phone call that decides the war. He calls a 2-star general most Americans have never heard of. A short, intense, cigar-chewing Greek-American from Charleroi, Pennsylvania. His name is William Gus Paganus. And Schwarzkopf tells him, you have 24 hours to get to Saudi Arabia. You are now in charge of moving the largest army the United States has deployed since Vietnam. Figure it out. But that was only the opening move. What Paganus did next broke every rule in the U.S. Army Logistics Manual. Understand who this man is. Paganus had commanded logistics in Vietnam. He had run the Army's largest supply command in Europe. Schwarzkopf had personally worked with him and called him, quote, the Genghis Khan of logistics. Paganus's core belief drilled into him since Vietnam was that generals win battles but logisticians win wars. And in the first week of August 1990, he was about to prove it. He lands in Riyadh on August 8th with a staff of exactly 22 officers. 22 people to receive an invasion force of 500,000. He has no warehouses, no trucks, no fuel contracts. No labor, no refrigerated storage in a country where daytime temperatures hit 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And here is what the history books leave out. He had no authorization from the Saudi government to do most of what he was about to do. His first decision breaks doctrine. Standard Army logistics runs on a 3-tier system. Theater, Corps, Division. Paganus collapses it. He creates the 22nd Support Command, giving himself direct authority over every port, every convoy, every warehouse in the theater. No middlemen, no paperwork chain. When a division commander needs something, one phone call reaches Paganus. His second decision is more radical. He walks into the office of the Saudi Ministry of Defense and, without a signed contract, without State Department approval, hires every civilian truck in the kingdom, every flatbed, every tanker, every bus. He puts 3,700 Saudi, Filipino, Bangladeshi, and Egyptian civilian drivers into the U.S. military supply chain. By September, 60% of American logistics in the desert is being moved by third country nationals under Paganus's personal handshake agreements. His third decision is the one that saves the war. He orders the construction of what he calls log bases, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, massive supply cities in the open desert. Log Base Alpha alone covers 17 square miles. It stores 45 days of ammunition, water, and fuel for an entire corps. He builds 3 of them in 90 days using bulldozers, Saudi contractors, and Army engineer battalions working around the clock in 120-degree heat. By November 1990, he has moved 240,000 troops, 17,000 tracked vehicles, and 114,000 wheeled vehicles into theater. And then on November 8th, President Bush announces that the force is doubling. Paganus has to move another 310,000 personnel and the entire WWII Corps out of Germany in 90 days. If this is landing, save this video. You will want to come back to this one because what happens next is the single most audacious logistical maneuver in modern military history. Schwarzkopf's war plan is not a frontal assault into Kuwait. It is the left hook, a massive flanking maneuver through the western Iraqi desert to encircle the Republican Guard from behind. To make it work, 2 entire American Corps, WWII Corps under General Frederick Franks, and ex-WWII Airborne Corps under General Gary Luck, have to be moved 260 miles west across open desert in complete secrecy in 17 days. 255,000 soldiers, 64,000 vehicles. every single one of them fueled, fed, armed, and supplied in the middle of nowhere. The Iraqis have no idea it is happening. Paganus moves them at night, on a single 2-lane road that Army engineers widen to 4 lanes overnight. He runs 18 convoys per hour, 24 hours a day. He calls it Log Base Charlie's Great Migration. When it is over, on February 23, 1991, Paganus has positioned enough supplies in the western desert to sustain a 2-corps offensive for 60 days. January 17, 1991, 2:30 hours Baghdad time. The air war begins. Lieutenant General Charles Horner's air campaign launches over 100,000 sorties in 39 days. But every one of those sorties is fueled by aviation gasoline that Paganus moved. Every bomb was assembled from ordnance Paganus stockpiled. Every pilot ate meals Paganus contracted. Then at 400 on February 24, 1991, Schwarzkopf gives the order. G-Day. The ground war begins. XVII Airborne Corps drives 190 miles into Iraq in the first 24 hours. The 24th Infantry Division under Major General Barry McCaffrey covers 260 miles in 100 hours, the deepest and fastest armored advance in American military history. VII Corps engages the Republican Guard at the Battle of 73 Easting on February 26th. 9 American M1A1 Abrams tanks of Eagle Troop, 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment commanded by Captain H.R. McMaster, destroy an entire Iraqi Tawakalna Division battle position in 23 minutes. 50 Iraqi tanks, 25 armored vehicles, 40 trucks, 0 American losses. The Iraqi army does not collapse because they are outfought man for man. They collapse because they are out of everything, out of fuel, out of ammunition resupply, out of food, out of water. Iraqi divisions dug in along the Kuwaiti border have been under coalition bombing for 39 days with no ability to be resupplied, because Iraq had no Paganus. On February 27th, the Iraqi retreat up Highway 80 out of Kuwait City turns into the Highway of Death. On February 28th, at exactly 100 hours after G-Day, President Bush orders a ceasefire. Kuwait is liberated. 29 Iraqi divisions have been destroyed or rendered combat ineffective. American combat deaths, 148. Non-combat deaths, 235. Iraqi military dead, estimates range from 20,000 to 50,000. It is one of the most lopsided victories in the history of industrial warfare. But here is what the history books leave out: the ground war was, in a very real sense, already over on January 16th. Paganus had built such an overwhelming logistical advantage that the moment ground combat began, the outcome was mathematical. Saddam had lost the war 6 months earlier in August 1990 when he failed to keep moving south into Saudi Arabia. He gave William Paganus 140 days. That was the entire war. When it was over, Paganus had moved 550,000 personnel, 7 million tons of supplies, 1.3 billion gallons of fuel, and 122 million meals across 8,000 miles of ocean. He built and operated over 500 base camps. He redeployed the entire force home in 120 days, faster than he had deployed it. For his work, Schwarzkopf pinned the 3rd star on Paganus's shoulders personally, in the desert, on the hood of a Humvee. Paganus retired in 1993 and was hired by Sears Roebuck to run their entire supply chain. His 3x5 index card briefing system, the tool he used to run 500,000 troops with a staff of 22, is now taught at Harvard Business School. And here is where it gets uncomfortable. The moment the war ended, the U.S. Army began quietly dismantling much of what Paganus had built. The Consolidated Theater Support Command was broken back up into the old 3-tier system. His civilian contracting model, which had moved 60% of coalition supplies, was replaced by contractor systems that would cost the Pentagon hundreds of billions of dollars in Iraq a decade later. His concept of forward log bases was largely abandoned. Why? Because Paganus's methods threatened the entire peacetime army bureaucracy. He had proven that a 2-star general with 22 people could outperform a system employing tens of thousands. That was politically intolerable. When Iraq happened again in 2003, the army had forgotten most of the lessons of 1991. The result: 20 years of logistical improvisation, contractor scandals, and supply failures. The doctrine Paganus wrote, moving mountains in the desert, the 3 C's of leadership, the Consolidated Support Command, is now being rediscovered in the 2020s as the Pentagon prepares for potential large-scale conflict in the Pacific. Every serious analyst planning the logistics of a possible Taiwan defense studies Paganus. Every single one. CTA 1213 Min. If this changed how you think about warfare, subscribe and hit the bell icon. New military history breakdown every Wednesday. Battles, commanders, and the decisions that shape the modern world. And drop it in the comments. Do you think the greatest generals in history are the ones who fought the battles or the ones who made the battles unnecessary? I read every reply. Outro 1315 Min. Here is the lesson William Gus Paganus left the world. Amateurs argue about tactics. Professionals study logistics. And true masters win the war before the first shot is fired. Saddam Hussein commanded the fourth largest army on Earth. He had 5,600 tanks and 20 months' warning of what was coming. He lost in 100 hours because he thought the enemy was the U.S. Army. The enemy was a Greek-American two-star general with a cigar, a clipboard, and 22 people. Paganus died in 2018. His methods were quietly buried. But the desert he built is still there, out beyond the Wadi al-Batin, and every logistics officer in the U.S. military knows his name. If this one hit, my next video is going to blow your mind. The true story of Operation Market Garden, and the single logistical decision by Field Marshal Montgomery that doomed 8,000 British paratroopers at Arnhem in 1944. That video drops next Wednesday. Do not miss it. On August 2, 1990, Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard invaded Kuwait with 100,000 troops and 700 tanks. 6 months later, the largest army the United States had deployed since Vietnam crushed the fourth largest military on Earth in exactly 100 hours. But the real story of Operation Desert Storm is not the battle. It is the man who won the war before the first shot was fired. Lieutenant General William Gus Paganus moved 550,000 American troops, 7 million tons of supplies, 1.3 billion gallons of fuel, and 122 million meals across 8,000 miles of ocean in 205 days. He built supply cities in the open desert. He orchestrated the greatest flanking maneuver in modern military history, Schwarzkopf's left hook, moving two entire corps 260 miles west in complete secrecy. This is the story of the general who proved that logistics wins wars. Featuring General Norman Schwarzkopf, General Frederick Franks, General Gary Luck, Captain H.R. McMaster, and the 22nd Support Command. 00, 00, the 100-hour collapse 00, 45 Kuwait falls 03, 00, the Genghis Khan of logistics 06, 00, 100 hours to victory 09, 00, the legacy the army buried 12, 00, subscribe 13, 00, the lesson of the desert new military history every Wednesday. Subscribe and hit the bell.